Welcome to This Week in Kansas with your host, Tim Brown.
Hello and welcome to This Week in Kansas. Thank you for being with us this morning. Lawmakers have to balance the budget, and that is a huge task this session. Some are questioning the ability to do so without a tax increase or massive cuts. What will legislators do, and are they backed into a corner? Governor Brownback has signed new welfare regulations into law. Some say the effort will hurt the less fortunate. Others say it will give positive incentive to those abusing the system. As always, there's plenty to cover. We'll start with the budget this morning and the impact that this will have on the state. Lawmakers really have a tough task ahead, and we've discussed this throughout the session, and this seems like a really sticky one this year because we're kind of in a situation with Governor Brownback and tax cuts and his experiment, and now we maybe have it eased back just a bit.
Well, and having sat through 5 budget processes as a member of the Senate, I have to say that this is a very unusual year, not just because of the economic issues that they're having to deal with, but also because this is the first time I've ever heard of the House not passing a budget. The Senate passed a budget, they put it in a House bill, and that's what put it in conference. So the House isn't going to pass a budget, and now that they've both passed non-concur, agree to disagree motions on it, it's really down to the 4 Republicans, the chair and the vice chair of Ways and Means in the Senate and Appropriations in the House. They're going to write the budget. The budget's going to be a straight up or down vote. It's not going to be an amendable bill. And it's going to be what those 4 want, and it's either going to pass or they go back to the drawing board. The biggest issue they've got right now is everybody's waiting with bated breath. Monday, the Consensus Revenue Estimating Group meets. They're going to put out the numbers. I had a conversation with one of our former guests, past guests, Martin Hauver, probably the most knowledgeable reporter in Topeka, and he said, Phil, you know, they've found all the change in the cushions and there's nothing left to find. Yep. They've pretty much raided the highway fund and other revenue sources to try to move it around, and they're basically out of tricks. He thinks the gut feeling is that the numbers aren't going to be very good, that they're going to have a big shortfall, and that they're going to have to pass some tax increase. And we're going to have to see what Les Donovan comes up with, who's chairman of the Senate Tax Committee.
Kelly, tax increase right now would be a pretty bitter pill, I think, for a lot of folks to swallow.
It is, and it depends what type of tax increase you go to. Governor Brownback, has been pretty clear about wanting to continue his glide to zero on income taxes for individuals. And so he has also proposed earlier in the session is raising taxes on tobacco and alcohol. Well, that really didn't get a very good reaction from the legislature. So they are going to be looking at several other options of potentially raising taxes or raising revenue, I should say. It's either one. But the biggest thing is we got to find out Monday what the numbers are that we're going to be dealing with. Here's a couple of examples of things that they may be looking at. Gasoline tax. They could look at increasing that from a nickel to a dime. About a nickel will generate you about $100 million in revenue. They will look at the tobacco tax, although they really don't want to tax a specific group of people. They'd rather do a tax that's more broad-based to everybody.
Well, and Kelly, you know, we've discussed this before, and I think you and I have discussed this. These consumption taxes are somewhat controversial for folks because of the fact that, particularly when you're talking about things like tobacco or alcohol or consumables, oftentimes it targets people who don't make so much money. Now, gasoline is a little bit broader base. Everybody drives, but I would also think that there are a lot of business owners out there that would get a little panicky if they see a nickel gas tax coming.
Well, it will, and it would be spread out a little bit more than just businesses, individuals would. The other thing that they will look at, and that is increasing by probably 15 basis points, sales tax. Raise it up to, I think would be 6.3. That is an option that's out there that's more on the consumption side versus, raising the income, which I do not think they're going to be looking at adjusting the income taxes at this time.
Phil, we're talking consumption taxes again, which again, I think, and we hear this criticism all the time, and this is one I agree with. I do think it shifts the burden unfairly, in my opinion, to folks who don't make as much money. I mean, if you're buying that loaf of bread, you're paying the same amount of taxes on that if you're making $1 million a year as you are that guy making $10 an hour.
Well, and Kansas tax policy has been based on a 3-legged stool: property, income, and sales tax, essentially. You know, the cigarette and the liquor taxes, those are excise taxes. And the reality is that those probably aren't, even if they doubled them or tripled them, they wouldn't generate the kind of money they're probably going to need to find next week. The legislature goes back into session on the 29th for the wrap-up session, so that's just 9 days after they get the numbers. So they've got 2 weeks saved up. They're probably going to use every bit of it. I think that the criticism is fair that sales tax tends to put the burden on lower socioeconomic groups disproportionately, where income taxes with a graduated increase are intended to put a higher burden on higher income earners. The issue is going to be, where are they going to get it? Are they going to find a mix? And we'll just have to see what they come up with. But I think the point's valid that excise taxes and sales taxes tend to put the burden on lower economic strata, middle and lower income classes.
This puts the governor in a very difficult situation because of the fact that the nation's eyes have been upon us since he started his economic experiment, and kind of famously.
Remember, he really didn't like that word.
No, I know. He coined the phrase though, and then I think he wished he probably hadn't. But a lot of folks were looking at us, including a lot of Republican governors across the nation, who have maybe backed off a little bit after seeing what has happened and how challenging this can be.
Well, and I'll jump in here. You got to look at everything and how our economy is doing, not just what type of revenue you could say shortfall, but that was the whole point of reducing the tax burden, was to give more money and put more money back in the pockets of individuals and businesses. And if every time they come out with a report, the number of private sector jobs has continued to increase. Again, we are at the highest point of employment we've been at in the history of the state, and that's what this package of reducing income tax is all about, is trying to get more jobs here in the state of Kansas. I just read that we are going to have another company move from Missouri into the state of Kansas and make Kansas their home base. I mean, that's part of what we're trying to do. We're trying to bring jobs here. We're trying to increase jobs of companies that are already here. And that's a bigger part of the package that we need to be looking at.
And I think that's positive, but the point that a lot of folks are making is, if you're cutting it, we have to cut our spending as well. If you're going to do that.
Sure.
If that's the road you're going to go down, which we've apparently agreed to do, you have to cut the spending to at least offset some of that.
And most of the state agencies have continued to hold flat with their spending. There's 3 areas where you have most of the increases, and that's K through 12 education. That is CAPERS, because the prior administration did not fully fund CAPERS like they were supposed to be. So we're now playing catch up, and we always will, yes. And then the third one is caseloads for Medicaid. I mean, those are the 3 to continue to increase every year.
So Phil, you envy those guys and women up in Topeka having to noodle through this one? You were on that.
That's easy. No, I have to make my own tough decisions. There is little doubt that they are going to be required to address some very difficult questions in the next 3 weeks. We'll see if they can get out of Topeka by the time they reach the 90th day. The reality is that the likelihood of that, I think, is probably flip a coin. I think they're going to be stuck there longer. And then, we've got the other shoe waiting to drop in May when the education opinion comes down. So they may be back in June. We'll see.
Well, and that's an interesting point, because there could be the extra session, which that opens up a whole new.
They could end up in a special session like we were in 2005 when they were ordered to spend more.
All right, let's take a break, and we're going to talk about welfare law when we come back.
Friday night on ABC.
My whole life has been getting me ready for this.
Bruce Jenner, The Interview, The Journey, The Decisions, The Future, the Diane Sawyer exclusive. Friday at 9/8 Central on ABC.
Over the past 12 years, along with our partners, we've presented the Golden Apple Award to more than 400 teachers. You can help us carry on the Golden Apple tradition this school year. Nominate an outstanding teacher at cake.com.
For $50 a month, you can get about 16 half-calf no-fat lattes, or a mani-pedi, or maybe a full tank of gas. Or, thanks to Furniture Row's 50 Under 50 event, you can get a room full of beautiful furniture. Stop in today and choose from 50 stylish room groups for under $50 a month. Now there's no need to wait to create the home you love. for less. Beautiful designs, comfortable prices. Furniture Row.
And welcome back. One of the more controversial bills that Governor Brownback signed into law just this week was this welfare restriction bill, which actually, and this is where I think it's kind of interesting, we were just talking about this during the break, a lot of this isn't new. These were already restrictions that were put in place, many of them, a couple of years ago, but this actually makes it law. And what's the purpose behind making it law as opposed to just leaving it an executive action?
All right. If it's an executive order, if it is an administrative order from the executive department, then that can be changed for the change in the executive.
Yep.
So if they write it into law, as they have in House Bill 2258, and I gave everybody the numbers, then go to KS Legislature, look it up, read the summaries, see what it really says. Once it's enacted into law, then you have to repeal it, and it's much easier to stop a bill from getting passed to passing one. So this puts a pretty big roadblock in the way if someone wants to try to roll this back in the future.
Kelly, people are criticizing this bill, this law. They say it's unfair for people who are welfare recipients. A big part of the criticism, I think, a lot of what I've seen in the news centers around the ATM withdrawals, the $25 limit.
Sure. Yeah. What this bill does is it does reduce the daily amount I believe you can get from an ATM is $25. You know,
I've never been to an ATM that gave out $25.
You know, yeah. But I think the bigger issue is the fact that we need to put the protections in there that money that they're getting from the ATM is not being spent on irresponsible products. I mean, from anywhere, and this is what you've seen. You know, going on cruises, going to exotic dancers, going to spending it on tobacco. These are not products. If you're really, truly needing money to buy your groceries, to pay your rent, that is where we're trying to get the money to. So it's actually being spent for those necessities, the rent, the food for your children, and not these, you know, extracurricular activities people like to do, or, you know, products that, you know, you don't need to live on.
Now, the way the system works right now, and correct me if I'm wrong, you're actually issued, it looks like a credit card,
Yeah,
is that correct?
correct, yeah.
And so this limits the ability to use that credit card on specific things like you mentioned. You can't go get a tattoo with that card. You can't go to a strip bar with that card. You can't buy cigarettes with that card. Am I in the neighborhood here?
More or less, yeah. I mean, and it put those restrictions on there, especially coming from ATMs and those type of transactions that are even in those locations too. I mean, casinos, that's another issue. You know, should you be spending your money you need to be buying food with at a casino?
Yeah, and I know this will probably generate a few emails because this has been very controversial, but there is an issue, I think, when you're looking at taking state money given by the taxpayers, and I'm certainly not making light of people in this situation, but there is an issue when you use that money to gamble, for instance, and I can understand that people would want that not to happen. Judge, you need to jump in on this one. You've been very quiet so far.
Well, yeah, I think the one thing that surprised me about this whole issue was the level of the rhetoric on both sides and the name calling that went on. Mm-hmm. I think that was unfortunate. It is difficult to criticize those that wish to make sure that when our money that we've given to the government is spent, that it is spent on how we all hope it's intended to be spent and not on these other items. The bill kind of went into the weeds a little bit and, you know, said you can't spend it at Victoria's Secret or, you know, I don't know. I think that the proponents of the bill have not done a really great job at making their point, particularly in their appearances on national media, and Kansas has had some attention that is probably unwarranted and certainly unwelcome regarding this legislation.
Well, I want to point out that, you know, there's a lot of good things in this bill too. Mm-hmm. And that's what people are not talking about, and that's you know, helping individuals that need to find a job, give them job training so they're able to go out there and apply for the jobs and give them better skills. And that's what we need. We need to get these people back into the workforce and as quickly as possible, and if the state can help provide training and provide the resources to that, that's a good thing, and that's what this bill does.
One of the national commentators made the point, and I saw this, you can't buy booze, but you can buy a gun with it. Is that accurate?
There may not be any restrictions on that.
I didn't know there was one for $25, but
Well, no, that's taking the cash out. I think you can use your card for bigger purchases as long as you.
all right. Well, I mean, you know, I think that it is a reasonable component that one of the requirements in the bill is that if someone is accepting this aid, that they either work 20 hours a week or they go to job training. And I mean, the real point is, and I think the goal of the proponents of the legislation, and the governor certainly is too, is that there is an improvement in self-worth and self-esteem that comes from earning your living, and that you will be a better person, and they want them to be better people and raise their families and run their kids and, you know, get a job and have a normal life and not just sit on the government dole. There's also a limit of how many months they can accept benefits, and then that's it.
That's
and
awfully
they're just
nice
cut
of the
off.
governor. He's a nice guy. Yeah.
I agree.
Let me. One of the comments, and we've got to move on, but and I think this is valid. There are places where a lot of folks that are lower income live. A lot of these folks don't have bank accounts. Your landlord's not going to accept the card, and so they pay their rent in cash. Now they can't do that.
I certainly understand that point, and I think that that is something that needs to be addressed. Perhaps, and I would not think that the payments they're receiving would be sufficient to cover average family's rental. But
Yeah, Section 8 or something like that.
yeah, Section 8. But then that's another government subsidized, regulated thing that I'm sure they can find a workaround on that. And the governor said he's willing to revisit this topic. If there's something that's not working, he wants to fix it. And I think he's genuine in that desire.
All right. Let's take a commercial break. When we come back, we'll talk about the new marijuana ordinance. We'll be back.
I'm Derek Schmidt, your Kansas Attorney General. Kansas law requires all roofing contractors operating in Kansas to register with the Attorney General's office. Roofers, get registered now. And homeowners, make sure your roofer is registered before you sign any contract. Your home is a major investment. For more tips about avoiding roofing and other home improvement scams or to register, visit www.inyourcornerkansas.org.
What does high-strength, roll-formed steel look like? Like this. Chevy Silverado. High-strength steel for high-strength dependability. Current Chevy owners can get this Silverado 1500 for a total value of $9,000. Plus 1 year of Sirius XM with every MLB game. See your local Chevy dealer today.
And welcome back. One of the bigger surprises of the municipal elections that happened just recently was this marijuana, they call it marijuana reform, this marijuana ordinance, which basically changed the way that sentencing and prosecution would happen for folks who were busted for first-time marijuana possession. Now it's up to the state to kind of determine what the next play is, maybe, or maybe it's up to, kind of depends, I guess, on who you read, what's going to happen with this, but there will be a legal challenge.
State law allows individuals, by submitting a petition, to put a question on the ballot for a municipal ordinance. Having been one who ran a different question, not about marijuana, on the ballot, back in the early 1990s, I can tell you how difficult it is, and we had to go all the way up to the Court of Appeals, and then we lost because we didn't draft it as tightly as they thought we should have. Basically, what happened was they didn't file the lawsuit until after it passed. It's interesting to look at the maps and see where the vote went in the municipality of Wichita. And you can look at the central core, and that was pretty much for it. And then you look at the wings on the far east and west side, and they were against it. It breaks down a lot of demographically with money and with party. So now the city, what Janice Miller has asked the state district courts decide. Derek Schmidt has filed a request for a declaratory judgment or an injunction against the city council in the state Supreme Court. The Supreme Court has told the city they have until May 6th to file a response to that, and I expect the city council is going to sit on their hands until they get an opinion from somebody.
Yep.
Because there's some that are very concerned that, you know, they might be breaking the law. And as an interesting aside, you know, Kansas has I'm just looking at the arguments each side is going to present. Kansas has a long constitutional tradition of home rule. And unless the legislature occupies an area of law, for example, like in DUI law, there's a specific provision that says no municipal ordinance can have a penalty that's less than what the state penalty is. There's no similar provision in the state marijuana law. And so, you know, for example, when Topeka didn't want to pay for putting their driving while suspended people in jail because the Shawnee County Sheriff was charging them so much a day, they just repealed the ordinance. And so they were going to say, okay, if you're going to arrest them for driving while suspended, you're going to prosecute them in state court, and then the county's going to pay for them to go to jail because some of the penalties are pretty high. The Wichita current ordinance is identical to state law, which means first-time possession is a Class A misdemeanor. The maximum is 12 months, $2,500. Second offense can be a felony. There's legislation currently pending in the legislature, if it hasn't already passed, that would significantly reduce those felony penalties. And in fact, they're trying to figure out how to get some of the repeat pot offenders out of the state prisons because they need to make room for violent criminals.
Yeah. Kelly, you spoke with Derek Schmidt this week?
Yeah. Had a conversation with him about this issue, and obviously he's representing the state of Kansas, and you know, he does what he is elected to do. He's trying to protect the state law. I agree with the fact that people should be able to petition and have these type of ballot measures, but you got to do it and follow what the state law says. And I don't necessarily just blame those that pushed this petition, but those that gave the legal advice that said it was okay to go ahead and do this. You know, the city should have caught this a long time ago, that this was contrary to state law and you know, would not be enforced. The other concerning thing on this, and this is something that the Attorney General Schmidt pointed out, is not only does it reduce the fine, but it also prohibits the law enforcement from submitting and passing on those convictions or onto the state of Kansas, the KBI, to put into the database. You know, these police officers swore an oath not only to the United States but to the state of Kansas, and having the city tell these law enforcement officers who swore an oath to the state of Kansas that you cannot do what is required by state law. I mean, that's just that is just another major conflict. So it goes beyond just the amount of fine. It goes to you know, telling law enforcement they can't do what they're required to do.
You know, I'll still say this. I was surprised it passed. I mean, I thought that this time through, I really was.
Okay.
I thought this time through that it might get a little attention and kind of ramp up for a future battle, but I'm kind of surprised it passed.
I wasn't surprised it passed. I think that as we have seen public opinion move in the last 20 years on several topics, I think we've seen it move on this topic also.
Nationally?
Well, nationally and locally.
Well,
I mean,
yeah,
I can remember being in the legislature. I was in the legislature in 2008, my last year, and here comes Bob Steffen, former Attorney General of the state of Kansas, and he's up there with them all saying we need to take care of this and we need to become more liberal.
Yeah. And I do want to point out this ballot was on a local election where you have extremely low voter turnout. And so just your special interest groups are able to get their people out to vote on these type of issues, and that's why you can see these things pass.
All right, I always thought it destroyed motivation.
There you go. We have to take a commercial break. We'll come back. We'll talk about Uber.
It's Mattress Firm's biggest Easy Savings event, where saving up to $400 on the best brands is easier than ever. Get easy savings of up to $200 on a Sealy Queen set for just $298.99. And through Tuesday, sleep interest-free until 2019. Plus, get a free frame, free 2-pack of pillows, or free delivery with approved credit. And experience the all-new Beauty Rest Black Hybrid exclusively at Mattress Firm. We guarantee our low price or your mattress is free. So don't miss Mattress Firm's Easy Savings event.
Embarrassing, sad, shameful. There's never an acceptable reason for driving dirty. Not with the Zips Unlimited Wash Club. For as little as $14.95 a month, members enjoy unlimited washes at any of our 5 Zips Car Wash locations. That's less than 50 cents a day. So show some pride. Zips your ride. Join the Zips Unlimited Wash Club today. Zips 3-minute car wash. Zip in, zip out, zip on.
And welcome back. I cannot believe we have not discussed this once on this program this year. And that's my fault. I'll take the grief for that one. But I did get an email just this week from a viewer who said, "Hey, we haven't seen this yet. We haven't talked about Uber. So let's talk about Uber." This got a lot of attention in Topeka, and in fact, we blew up some mail servers apparently, from what I understand.
They did, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
well,
when I say
if there was a Dale Carnegie course for influencing the legislature, the reality is Uber wasn't paying attention. They slept through the class. You know, I mean, it's just like all the cardinal rules of how you win friends and influence people were broken by this thing. I mean, they sent out some national alert to everybody in there, you know, because everybody does this by their phones and by email. And so they like to send out a national one, and they said, you know, hey, why don't you let Kansas know how you feel about this? And, you know, a legislator sitting there trying to pour through 1,000 emails or 5,000 emails or whatever, trying to find that one from a constituent when everybody else is like from New York State, New York City or whatever, you know. And the whole issue is about, should Uber drivers have extra insurance, and should they have a background check like a school bus driver?
Yep.
This,
okay. Yeah. Kelly, jump in.
You know, this issue
about 2 minutes.
Is really about protecting, you know, those that hold the mortgages, I guess you could say, or car loans for that little gap of insurance in there. But you know, it's interesting because this is a bill. It's kind of about, you know, personal rights, and most of our legislators, you'd sit there and think, okay, they're going to be against this bill because it kind of is like the big government or, you know, corporate regulation coming in. But you know, after the after Uber sending out all these emails, I think just really ticked off a lot of the legislators in retribution. I mean, this thing passed with, I mean, more than super majorities. I mean, over 100 and some members of the House voted for it. I think you only had a couple that voted no in the Senate. So the governor has got until Monday to either sign or veto this bill. The governor very well could veto this bill. The question will be, will the votes be there to override his veto? A lot of these legislators have had time to cool off from getting bombarded with emails and may change their vote on this if it comes up for veto override.
Phil, this is kind of interesting because, as Kelly mentioned, maybe this just really made a bunch of these lawmakers mad.
Yeah. I mean, you know, I mean, being a legislator, particularly for many of them, which is their first year or their second year, yeah, it's not an easy job. Yep. And there's a lot of moving parts, and you got to keep track of a lot of stuff. And you know, all of a sudden, you hit your inbox and you've got 12,000 emails. You panic. You know, and then you realize what's going on. Then you get mad because how long does it take you to clean out because the House members, they don't get a secretary. Yep. Senators get one secretary. House members have to share. And if you're going to think that lady is going to clean out, you know, 36,000 emails from 3 boxes so he can go to committee meeting, think again. So, you know, they had to clean them all up themselves, and that didn't make them very happy because they'd rather go to the reception tonight rather than sit there and go delete, yes, delete, yes, delete, yes.
All right. Well, guys, thank you very much. We're out of time. We appreciate you being on the program. We appreciate you watching the show. If you have any questions or comments, please email me at thisweekinkansas@keg.com. We're going to go to the reception now.
Yay!